Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Right now it's morning where we are, or is it? Wait a minute. Yeah, it is. But we
This
don't know when you're listening, so you may be listening in the wee hours of the morning or there at night, but you're listening, and that's what counts most. Welcome to The Solution. Nothing changes if we change nothing. I'm here with my co-host and co-worker. Why don't you introduce yourself?
good day, good morning, good life, good life. I'm going to say that. Good life, everyone. My name is Chevar Francis. Also, I'm a part of the New York City Prevention Resource Center, Community Development Specialist. And like Ronnie said, I'm the co-host. Ronnie, how you been?
I'm good. And I'm Ronnie Katz, the director of the New York City Prevention Resource Center. But we'd like to share more about who we are in general during this podcast. So we'll be talking about our prevention work and everything. But
Absolutely.
I'm doing pretty well. It's kind of a nasty day out here on Long Island. Tropical storm Faye is working her way up the East Coast.
Did you
And
just like drop like a hip hop rap bar? Like Faye and Way. I caught that. I know you're a musician. You just dropped some lyrics and bars on the people. So if they didn't know, you
Hey,
were right.
I can do that too. You know, Faye's working her way up the East Coast. What can I
Exactly.
say? Don't go away. Just stay where you are, and maybe you'll be safe. I know. Okay, it's the old white lady rap. It is what it is. But it's interesting you say that because I remember the first time I heard rap.
Right.
It was in the 70s. And I know I lived in Queens in a nice privileged neighborhood. We didn't hear, I was into R&B a lot, but I had never really heard rap because I wasn't anywhere where I would be exposed to it. And I was sitting in the woods with a band I was in. We were called Three Penny Opera with the two other women who were in the group with me. And we were writing music that day. We were writing a song called Gotta Keep It Moving. And
Mhm.
three young guys were walking through the woods. We were at Cunningham Park in Queens, and they stopped and they listened and they liked our song that we were writing. And they said, "We're musicians too." And we said, "Really?" They said, "Yeah, we rap." And we were like, "Well, what's rap?" This is maybe 77, 78. And we said, "Please, let's hear." And they did a really raw, cool street rap. And we were blown away. We had never heard rap before, not in that sense at least. And that was my introduction to rap. And I'll never forget those guys. They were so talented. I don't know what happened to them, but it was just this beautiful moment where we were doing country music, they were doing rap, and we just shared our music and both enlightened each other. And it's just one of my favorite memories.
Yeah, I live hip hop. I love hip hop. I love all aspects of hip hop. I used to be the MC. I attempted to DJ, then realized it's really expensive to buy records in upkeep. So writing music was easy. Was cheaper. All I needed was a pen and a pad for me. But it was taxing on the mind to come up with lyrics and come up with stories and ideas. But so that's the payoff. But yeah, music in general for me is about this. Our podcast is primarily about prevention, and it's like how does music align with that? You talked about hip
Hmm.
hop. Well, we mentioned hip hop, and one of the earliest songs by the Furious Five was the message: "Don't push me. I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head." Ha, 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 ha. It's like a jungle sometime. I'm gonna stop there. But anyway, go listen to that song. Really positive song back in the '80s, and how hip hop speaks to what's going on and not only hip hop, all forms of music speaks to what's going on in their neighborhoods or in society as a whole. But for me, hip hop in particular has a specific message that can relate to prevention or relate to what's going on and prevention in a way where we're giving that message of what's going on in society and say, you know what, this is what's happening. How do we change it?
Yeah.
Well,
And it might be interesting in a future podcast to highlight some of the music that carries that message.
mhm.
I remember I was a substance abuse prevention intervention specialist, SAPIS, at John Adams High School in the 80s through the 90s, late 80s. And I used to use a lot of R&B in my lessons with the young people. And I remember using TLC, Waterfall.
And nice. Don't go chasing
And
with that. Nice,
yeah,
nice.
it was just so powerful to go in with that song. And we would just tear apart the lyrics and talk about what they meant. And we talked about HIV prevention through it and substance use prevention, and it just had so much messaging. So I would love for us to bring some music in the future and talk about it.
Definitely. I'm a real quick point I want to mention so we can move on about what you just said. Similar to what you're saying about teaching. In one of my summer camps a few years ago that I ran, we did an activity called Decoded, where
Mm-hmm.
the students would take songs or poems and decode and make their own interpretations of what the songs meant to them.
Nice.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. Like, music is important.
Mm-hmm. Well, but it's with the theme of what we've been doing. We always mention NYC POP, which is
Mm-hmm.
NYC Partners of Prevention.
Mm-hmm.
About 15 coalitions throughout New York City working together to deliver a positive message to young people and their families, especially as we're going through these difficult times, as far as the quarantine and a lot of the unrest, and we're trying to address those issues. And what we're talking about this week's post is about positive identity in youth and how it's important to be able to build that. And we're hoping to talk about that today. And I don't know, maybe somebody will stop by and we'll get to talk to them about it.
Well, I want to say thank you for allowing my daughter to participate in that, giving her feedback on positive identity in the post and so forth. So she was extremely appreciative. She's like, thank you. So from her and me to the NYC Pop group, thank you.
Well, she really helped us go in the right direction with that. But sometimes we forget that young people are going through so much and
Mm-hmm.
building that positive identity. I was thinking about that before, and I was thinking, just looking at what I wrote down here, talking about the positive identity and how it affected each of us. I was trying to remember what
Mm-hmm.
are the things that helped me as a youth. What did I do during my summers that helped me develop into who I am today? I hit some bumps in the road, but overall I had some really great experiences. And I started thinking about how did I spend my summers and what my favorite activities, and I was curious to talk to you about that.
No, I remember my summers growing up, having water fights, going to for not physical fights. We threw water on each other. With water balloons and water guns. I remember going to summer camp, swimming. I remember my summer being a kid. I loved being a
Mm-hmm.
kid. Granted,
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a time where there was a crack epidemic. But I was allowed at the time to be a child, to not be around certain things. I do have a passion and pride to that, with my dad, but then I'll talk about that another time. But learning how to ride a bike, which is one of the coolest things. Learning how to
Mm-hmm.
throw a frisbee. I realize a lot of kids do not know how to throw frisbees. So,
A lot of adults too.
learning to swim, a lot of these things that you think will be second nature or who would teach that to you. A lot of things I taught myself. I taught myself how to swim. I taught myself how to ride a bike. I literally, got on the
Wow.
bike and learned, understand the physics behind riding a bike was balance. That's it. You have to figure out balance. Once I figured out the physics, bike riding is easy. As far as we talked about this prior to this, is in addition to that, we mentioned hip hop. I was a graffiti artist. I'm not going to sit here and lie behind you, have a train. Shout out to the trains back in the days. We tagged, and that was a part of our summer, because if we didn't have the basketball, if we didn't have the baseball, if we didn't have the swimming, we had other alternatives. I chose the alternative to write graffiti opposed to using and selling drugs. That was my release. Again, as far as my childhood, I all these stories are popping in my head. You just brought things up. We used to play baseball in the park in Marcus Garvey Park. For those of you guys who know, it's also called Mount Mars Park. We played baseball over there before there was a sand field. It was a concrete field. I remember a group of friends. We would buy our own equipment, and no adults. Once you're 8, 9, 10 years old, similar like the movie Sandlot, we would go out and play as kids. We did kid things, and I always talk about, teenagers and kids are going to do kid things. This is what we do. When you become a teenager, you get in trouble, and that's what you do. It's not. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ronnie.
They need to. I mean, you're talking, and the thing is, I lived in Queens, you lived in Manhattan, and we did stuff in the street.
Yeah,
You know, we played
stickball.
stickball, and we played stickball, we played wiffle ball, you know, stoop ball.
Yes, yes.
You know, but these were all things we did. And I think about young people this summer and how drastically things have changed, because so many activities are gone.
Double dutch, tag, hide and go seek. I don't even know if kids know how to play these games anymore. When I ran my after school program, I actually started a kickball league amongst the schools in the
Fun.
Bronx. And I realized that kids don't know how to play kickball. The most, for me, one of the easiest games in the world, you kick the ball, you run to the base, and you don't get tagged. But I learned that kids didn't know how to play kickball. So we had to do like the fundamentals of kickball. Literally, you know, the
Wow.
and it's like it's baseball, but it's not baseball, you know, and understanding, you know, when you run past the base or you catch the ball, you should throw it to the second baseman. It's the fundamentals of, you know, so they learn two sports, learn baseball and kickball at the same time. But it was one of the greatest experiences. The kids loved it. You know, we had stats, we took pictures, we actually highlighted it within the Children's Aid Agency. It was one of the coolest things, you know, for me, just to teach young people a new activity.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the young people today, like, you know, I don't see the streets being blocked up. I don't see people playing stickball anymore. I see older people playing stickball, you know, as far as like, you know, reinvigorating themselves and remembering the youth. And I don't see the young people doing it anymore. I don't see the young people, you know, we had basketball rims in our block where someone would buy a rim from like Toys R Us back in the days and set it up for us when we would play it in the street. I don't see that anymore. You know, I don't see kids outside unless you go to a gym and you're on a team or you're going to the park somewhere far. You know, that's the only way to play soccer, to play baseball, to play these different things. You know, I don't know what happened where we don't have that. I guess it's the fear of being out in the street.
We have a guest.
You do.
We have someone at our door. Let's invite her in and we'll tell people about her. Okay. In a minute, you're going to meet our guest. And for me, it was camp. Camp was like, I mean, you know, and we went to, my dad was a fireman. My mom didn't go back to work till, hey, Venus. We're talking about the summers. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. We're so excited. We have our special guest today, Venus Moore. And
thank you for having me.
Well, it's always up. There's the background.
Yeah, I was trying to see if you guys could see it. Okay.
Yeah, it kind of creates this effect though, where like
quick tip when you go into your virtual background, change the setting to not having a green screen because you might have that setting on.
Oh.
So that's a tip for anyone who's listening.
Yeah.
So
see, in addition to talking about prevention, we give you tips on Zoom.
I had to learn that the hard way too. So don't worry. Venus, I've known Venus for years, but like Ronnie said, you know, you can, if you want to jump into this conversation really quickly, we're talking about our childhood and what we did over the summers. You know, so you know, I talked about, you know, playing tag. You know, well, I even mentioned this hot peas and butter. You remember hot peas and butter?
Oh yeah.
Still the bacon, Red Devil. Yes, playing those games as kids. You know, if you want, can you share about your summer growing up?
Oh, so my summer growing up, it was very, very rich, I must say. And I didn't know it at the time. Like a lot of times, you know, you don't really appreciate your childhood until you become an adult and you start to see things differently. But my childhood, I was always busy, always. I grew up in a Christian home, so I stayed in church every day. And in my church, we had a lot of activities. My church was in Harlem, and it was like youth development before it was youth development. And so we did a lot of activities. There was a lot of leadership activities. I was the president of the usher board, the president of this, president of that.
Of course you were.
And so, and, you know, it just created this sense of self and knowing that that I can be successful. For me personally, I wasn't good at school. So church was the only thing. My extracurricular activities was something that I thrived in. And then with church, as I grew up as a teenager, I attended Menacing Townhouse in Harlem, and they had so many youth programs. So they had Feather Phoenix, Tapawingo, The Real Deal. And it was just a gathering of young people from all over, really, from all over the 5 boroughs. They would just come to Harlem. And so that just kept us busy, and our people that were older, as we say, elders, they were on us. They expected us to be the best that we could be. And they trained us. They talked to us like, if you get stopped by the cops, it's like, you talk to this person, you dress like this for an interview. So it was really a great experience. And that's something that I'm trying to cultivate for my son, so he can grow up to be successful as well.
Well, you're right on target too, is what we've been talking about. But before we go further, we should let people know who you are.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm glad you just went into it,
Chevar.
which is pretty cool. So Venus Moore, someone I've known for, I'm not going to tell anyone, we can't share how long, but that'll give away our ages. Just one of the most wonderful people in the world I've known. She's a sister to me. Like, we reach out to each other. Like, I have stories. And I'm going to stop right now because I can keep going. Venus, tell our listeners who you are and what you're doing right now.
Okay, so my name is Venus Moore. Currently, I work for the New York City Problem Gambling Resource Center. And we, just to tell you a little bit about our program, our parent agency is the New York Council, and we have 2 goals, and that's pretty much what I'm really, really glad that we have these 2 goals, because I think problem gambling is a topic that needs to be discussed. It's called a hidden addiction. And so people are not really talking about it unless unless you're struggling with a gambling disorder or someone who is. And so our program really focuses on awareness with problem gambling, educating the community, as well as treatment. So we do a lot of things, and my role, which pretty much my childhood led me to that. I did a lot of community work, and Ronni, you know that, just working with Chevar 98, years, like about 10 years in working with Ronni. So it's similar. I'm doing the same thing, but I'm just focusing on the problem gambling aspect. And I'm really, I really want to spread the message that, it's okay and you're not alone. And if you need help, you can reach out to us. So that's pretty much in a nutshell. And I love community work. I'm on all the coalitions in the Bronx just because I know that when you have a community that doesn't have a lot of resources, you need to be your own resources. And New York City is really unique with that. Like, we come together. So we come together and we work together with the neighborhood just to make sure that everybody is safe and everybody has the resources, and just bringing that problem gambling awareness and saying it's okay.
I'm so glad you're saying that too, because people outside of New York City, they base New York City on what they see on TV.
Yes.
And they have no idea what a community we are. How, and neighborhoods, they have no clue. We were talking just about the way we both grew up at different times and the things we always did in the street, and just the sense of neighborhood. And we go to a lot of the same coalition meetings, so we've all worked together for a while. But I'm glad you said that too, because I had an uncle who was a gambling addict, and it destroyed his life. It destroyed marriages. It destroyed his career. And it's part of the addiction that runs in my family, which I have as well, not in gambling, but in substance misuse. So it's important work.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the same muscle, the same addiction muscle. So it's pretty much the same thing, but it just has that stigma. It's like, I'm not going to go and get help if I just spend my son's college fund, so it's a different type of stigma.
So I have a question, because I'm listening, and this is for either one of you guys, because we talk about drug prevention and we're talking about gambling prevention. Like, how do you talk to someone or talk to people and explain to them that these are similar? And especially with in some cultures, like playing games like Pity Pat and Tunk and Spades. It's gambling, in Venus, you could disagree or agree, like seeing people playing a spades game and it turns into
a fight.
Yes, I didn't want to say it, but yes. Like, how do you have that conversation with someone and say, what, this is an addiction, this is a problem?
Well, one, I think it's very hard. It's very challenging because the community has to be ready. You know that, right? They have to see it as a problem before I even go in. So I think for me, I just come in and just educate and say,
Hmm.
and ask questions. Can you tell me, because some people like drugs and alcohol, some cultures don't see it as a problem.
Absolutely.
Like certain rituals, 16s, and it's the same for gambling. It's really the same. If your parent never talked to you about gambling, but they talk about drugs and alcohol, you're gonna be like, oh, it's okay. So it's a challenge, and we open up conversations. I'm interviewing the community and people just to get their thoughts and their opinions, because I can't say gambling is wrong. That's not what we're saying. We're neutral. What we're saying is, if you have a problem, we're here to help you. And we just want to educate the community of what type of gambling do you participate in? Why do you participate in that gambling? And then sometimes when you talk to the community, you learn that, like with the African American community, it was more of a resource. There were resources, so we were trying to share money, and so we say, let's pick a number. So you have to know that. You have to be culturally aware of that, and every culture has their own gambling story. And so it's very important to know that before you go in and say this or that or don't do this.
Yeah, that's a great point too. And the community readiness is key. And as far as the similarities, if you look at the behaviors they create,
Yeah.
that's where you're going to find the similarities, because addiction is addiction.
Yes.
And whatever you're addicted to, like, I don't like to even focus on a substance when I'm dealing with somebody about addiction. I deal on the behavior. We talk about that, but all we can do is go in and educate people, make them aware, and give them the resources and materials. And when they're ready, they'll come around.
Yeah.
That's it.
Be ready. That's all we could do, especially during COVID. I'm sure that substance, the addiction rates all over has been going up.
Tremendously.
A lot of people are just in distress, and self-medicating. So.
Overdoses are up all over the country. And they're seeing drinking is up. I mean, we've been following this whole thing with alcohol to go, and I think orders were up something like 51%. It's skyrocketing. And I was curious, how are you sustaining this work during this whole quarantine?
I had to be very creative. So a lot of my stuff has been virtual. Unfortunately, Problem Gambling Awareness Month was kind of like smashed in March because of COVID, but we still had a couple of clinicians who did screenings for problem gambling for the community. I've been doing some stuff around mental health. I sent infographics to you. So a lot of it's just sitting on coalitions, just talking about it, just being a resource for the community. I've even shared food pantries information, because I feel like that's very important. We can't talk about gambling. We can't talk about drugs. We can't talk about alcohol if people are not feeling safe and not feeling comfortable. And so I think all of us, we all know this, but I'm preaching to the choir, but to the people who are listening, all of us need to take a step back and kind of say, what do they need? And that's the hard part of community work, because, you have people like, well, what's the numbers? And I'm like, I can't get there yet.
Right. But people are so used to things, numbers and substance or behavior. They don't get into they don't understand the whole complexity of the situation. But yeah, it's been hard. As you know, we've been creative as well. We see Venus at a lot of virtual meetings, which is good. But we've worked together for a lot of years, and it's, all part of the same disease.
Yes. I agree. And that's why I switched over. I was very intrigued with problem gambling, because I felt like it was something in our community. When I say community, NYC, it's something that we're not addressing. And me personally, just having family members, my family's from Memphis and Mississippi, gambling is rampant. They have a Mississippi boat, and just me talking now, I have an aunt who is older and is addicted to gambling. And study shows that women usually become addicted to gambling later in life, and men usually become, a problem gambler early in life. So, and right now, so I'm very passionate about that. And when I see people, who are struggling with that disease and need help, so that's the kind of piece of the next level for the community work, because I do consider myself a community something. I like to say something to keep it humble. Whatever I need to do. So I consider myself a community something, a community ally, community advocate, whatever is needed in the community. I really feel that that's my passion, that's my purpose in life, to speak out against that.
Is there a reason why that the difference between male and female, where male become,
Yeah.
can you share?
Mhm. Definitely. So with males, males are more competitive. And let me just say this disclaimer. We're still looking for research for the LGBTQ community. We don't have any. So if anybody would like to talk to us, we're really open. But the reason right now we just have these research on these two genders. And I want to be clear with that because I do have friends who are non-binary. So I want to say that. But yeah, males tend to gamble earlier because just they're being, they're competitive and they're into
Right.
sport, and that's just their nature. And women, it usually happens when it's a traumatic experience. And so, in the case of my aunt, she was in a relationship that wasn't unhealthy, just to say the least, and he passed. And
Wow.
so, she had a lump sum of money. And so money is like the substance for gambling.
Okay.
But she became very, and then just talking to my family, she was always a gambler, but it was like different tips, but she really went full out after the past.
Wow.
Huh. Dave, that's interesting stuff to me, especially
Yeah.
having watched my uncle, over the years, because, he got better as he got older, but that's after he lost everything a few times, and he was on his third wife.
He got it together, you got to give him credit.
Believe me, I do. I give him a lot of credit. He's gone now, but have you been seeing an increase in gambling during this whole quarantine period?
So I've been talking to my clinicians because I just want to find out what's going on. In the Bronx, honestly, there's so many other stuff that's going on that people are not really reaching out, and that's why I thank you for this opportunity so people can actually call. But what is interesting, a lot of my clinicians are getting reoccurring clients, so clients that were in our program before that dropped out. Now they're really going strong. And so that's a blessing, to say the least, that they know like they could come back and, finish the program and the treatment. And we try to help them with GA. So if they need help, if they don't want to come, a lot of our clinician stuff has been teletherapy due to COVID. But that's one of the interesting things. A lot of problem gamblers who dropped out of treatment are now coming back. So, that's a plus, and we're very grateful for that.
And GA being Gamblers Anonymous.
Yeah, Gamblers Anonymous. I'm sorry. Yeah, we partner with them, and so people can call us and ask us when they're having a meeting, and we kind of, we help them, and we link them. So the cool thing about our program is if the person doesn't have insurance, we'll pick up the tab.
Nice.
So I have a question, because this is about quarantine, and it's in line with what we're talking about. Online gambling, is that has it gone up? Is there new virtual gambling? Have you guys noticed that?
Yeah, we're actually now collecting data, and we know because of COVID, just a lot of young people gambling, gaming is like intertwining. So yes, it has definitely been going up. We found out when sports, when they quarantined and stopped, there was like a Korean ping pong match and people were gambling. That was the only sport that was being played. So people were just gambling on that. Just like drugs and alcohol, it's all about access. And now we see commercials. I even see there's a Bet TV. I thought it was BET. I'm like, oh, what? It's very similar.
I'm sorry. That's hilarious.
No, I was really.
We don't mean to laugh at that.
They have like so many channels. I'm like, they're like talking about, oh, this is how you bet, and I was just like, oh, okay. This is channel. So yeah, again, it's all about access. It's all about, and a lot of companies are jumping up. The casinos are opening now. I even have friends who posted on Facebook and they were like, yeah, I'm at the casino. I'm like, it's COVID, girl.
I didn't even know the casinos opened up again.
The casinos are open.
I know in Las Vegas, they opened their casinos with social distancing, but they had to close them because of the spike in COVID cases.
Right.
Yes. So we're prepared for it. We're very prepared. We're prepared.
Now, is there like a number or that people can call?
Yes. So the number is 929-222-9566. 929-222-9566, and you will get directly, that's the hotline that we have, and you will speak to our program managers, and they're amazing. They usually connect you to care within that week. That's how good they are.
That's great stuff. So I sit here and I'm totally interested, but I'm also so proud because I've watched you grow. I mean, Venus, you started out with our program in the PRC, the NYC PRC, and as a community development specialist, and now you've taken it to a different level with the gambling, and you know, you've just really blossomed and grown, and you're doing such incredible work.
Thank you so much.
I knew you even further back than that as youth development counselors.
No, you've known each other since you were born.
Pretty much. You can say that.
You know, Chevar and I was running the Bronx when we had the whole South Bronx children's aid, youth development, I'm going to say on lock. I know that's not professional, but every parent, every program, every drug dealer, everybody knew who we were, and it was
absolutely
just an amazing time. Like it's a pleasure to work with both of you, and just doing all that work before that prepared me to where I am now.
Yeah, and you know, again, we always say this, that work is prevention.
Yes.
The strongest sense of the word. People don't realize it, and it kind of brings us back to that whole positive identity thing. And you know, because this week's post for New York City Pop is about positive identity, how to help youth develop it. From the Search Institute. I'll just read that fast. It's one of the 40 developmental assets, and young people need to believe in their own self-worth and to feel that they have control over the things that happen to them.
Yes.
You know, and we've been talking about that a lot, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how do we help youth build positive self-identity.
So I think we have to first encourage them to be themselves. That's one. And two, we have to allow them to be themselves, because I think positive identity is a two-way street. It's really about how you perceive yourself and how others perceive you. I know we have this saying, like, we don't care what other people think, but truthfully we do, you know? And so it's all about creating a safe space for people to be themselves and not judging them. And so one of the ways is like even just asking them, like, how are you feeling? What are your fears? What do you think your strengths? How do you love yourself? And those might be simple questions, but at least it gives them to thinking, why do I love myself? How do I love myself? You know, and just keeping them engaged in their interests is very important, and resources, because, you know, if you want to do something and you don't have the accessibility to do it, then, you know, it's kind of hard for you to achieve your goal, and now you have to find somewhere else. So if you're in a community, or if you're in a place where you're allowed to be yourself, whether, you know, that has to do with how you dress, your sexuality, how you view yourself, you know, how you identify, that is where the person will thrive and be them. And so I think it's a collective community. And I think as a community, we need to talk about that. How do we make sure that the youth are having positive identity? Because we don't want people to see themselves, you know, disconfigured. Like, that's not a healthy mindset. And I think it's important for these young people to be aligned mind, body, and soul. And it's hard because of so much stuff that's going on, especially this time. It's like, how do you view yourself? But I'm so proud of the young people, because they're out here, you know, advocating. I'm like, yes.
They're leading the social justice movement.
Yeah,
absolutely,
definitely.
I echo what you're saying. I'm so proud of the young people, you know, and seeing and witnessing what's going on, you know, from all races, you know, from all creeds, all religions, you know, all over the world. You know, it started, you know, unfortunately with the situation, with the fact that the world is changing right before my eyes. Like, I strongly believe I wouldn't see it.
Like this is
and to being able to see it, I think is great. You mentioned something about questions, about, you know, about how are you, how do you feel, what have you. Those questions are extremely important to young people. And you and I have done the same work in the past. We were both program directors. We've done a lot of the same community development specialists. You know, am I going to problem gambling next? I don't know.
Wait a while, please.
Don't give Ronnie a heart attack.
Yeah, really.
we've done a lot of the same work, and, you know, and one of the questions that you said kind of triggers something that happened, you know, way back when I was in the Bronx at 166, and I had a young lady in the back of the lunchroom who was sitting by herself, and none of the staff, in my mind, was paying attention to her. So instead of me addressing the staff, I walked up to her and I just said to her, "How was your day?" And she had this perplexed look on her face. And then she followed with, "What do you mean?" Like, with real angry. I'm like, "Well, no, how was your day?" And when I asked it again, and she said, "Well, no one's ever asked me that question before." And it kind of hurt to hear that no one's ever asked. This is a middle school student, a 7th grader, who I think by the 12-year-old, for 12 years of her life, no one has ever asked her, "How was her day?" Yep. I didn't ask, you know, I didn't say what was wrong or why are you sitting back here by yourself. My leading question was, "How was your day?"
Yep. And she was perplexed, like, what? Yeah, yeah, it's so true.
And you know, we end up getting to the root of what was going on, but I remember this student, and I still speak to her via Instagram now, you know, and I still encourage her to be her greatest self. You know, her coming to me every morning just to say hello, because I asked her how was her day. Like, every morning until she graduated, she made sure to come by to see if I was there and say, "Hey, Mr. Chevar, I just came to say hello."
Yeah. And that's what young people need. It's just simple and sweet. You know, we go in and we make these whole big programs and it goes over their head. And it's just like, they just want to feel safe. They just want to feel loved.
She's a chef now, so that's where her life is now.
Wow.
Yeah, she's a culinary arts student, you know, and she posts on Instagram, and I actually highlighted her on my personal Instagram, and she said, "Thank you for this, reminding me that I'm doing this work, and that, you know, and that I played an intricate part in her life." So, but those questions,
that one question, you're that caring adult. Sometimes it only takes one interaction, or, you know, it takes a few weeks or a few years. It's different with everybody. I mean, I've been in the supermarket and somebody's packing, and I'll stop and look at them and ask their name and say thank you, and I see it makes that person's day.
Yep.
And we don't realize a simple act like that, especially with young people who often feel like they're just invisible. You know, it makes such an impact on them. And just, I think of all the young people I work with, we always talk about this, about building resilience in young people, and how just, you know, being that teacher, being that counselor, being that person in the after school program. I used to run after school centers as well. I mean, we all have that in common. And it makes such a difference going down to visit, you know, a grandma or another relative for 3 weeks in Memphis, you know, or something.
Yeah,
that saves a child's life. And
those are all protective factors.
That's right. And they're all assets, you know, and for those that don't know, the 40 developmental assets are basically protective factors, and they're broken down into 40 different assets that if we build in a child's life, they have a better chance at success in their life and a better trajectory. We were talking earlier about our summers and what were the favorite things you did during the summer, because this summer, so many kids aren't going to be able to do those things. For me, I went to camp every summer. Or, you know, and it was usually like, it was Federation, or we went, you know, my father's a fireman. We didn't have a lot of money, so I'd get a scholarship and go out. They would take us out to Long Island. I would ride for an hour and a half on a bus, but we get out there and we learn how to like make all these things in the woods. And I went camping. I started camping when I was 7, going out and having overnights. And I learned how to like make my campsite, create it, you know, and it just, then I'd go back to being back in, you know, back in New York City. And it just made such a difference in my life, those summers. I look forward to it every year because it was different. It taught me something new. I felt like I had choices out there. Yeah. What are some of the stuff you like doing when you were young? What are your memorable summers?
I would have to say camp. My grandmother was like, "I need a break, and you're going away." And so I would say, "I need a break, and I need to go too." So I think camp was very memorable because like it was independence. I got to pick my own clothes. I got to make friends. I went hiking. I went swimming. It was a way for me to get out the city. For me, and I think that's important for city kids. to get out
Absolutely.
and see that, you know, you see the stars. So that was my favorite part, that I got to see the stars in camp, because in the city it was so polluted, you still can't see it. So,
Right.
you know, and now I chase the moon. Thank you, stars.
That's right. You know, for people who don't know, Venus has many talents, and just, you know, to mention, you're a healer.
Yes.
You know, and what about some of the spiritual kind of work you do?
So yeah, I do a lot of spiritual work. I am a sacred woman practitioner. I studied under Queen Afua, who was a international holistic healer, and I've studied the moon. I teach crystal classes. Ronnie's really going to help me. I'm really into various ancient medicinal healing practices, I guess, to say that. So don't put me in a box. But yeah, so I'm just fascinated with just eating healthy and just making sure that, you know, my space is sacred, and I just teach other people to, you know, to make sure that they to understand that they deserve that same treatment as well.
Well, the path to love starts with loving self.
Yes, self-love is key, and that's another thing that goes back to self, you know, with young people with self-identity. You have to love yourself, and that's that I'm instilling in my son, who is 9, asking him, how do you love yourself? What do you do? Love yourself, say affirmations. Young people, adults, say affirmations. They help the brain in so many ways. They trick the brain into making you feel happy, and sometimes we need to be tricked, especially in the world that we live in, and it's just a great way to feel good.
Listen, Venus, you're an amazing mother. And,
Yes,
you know,
you're both amazing parents.
Thank you.
And by the way, I'm proud of both of you.
Thank you. I do the same with my kids. You know, my son just turned 14, and now he's like, stop telling me this, because he, you know. So I'm learning to allow him to have that positive identity, have him be himself. You know, I still encourage him. You know, my daughter also. I'm very positive. I text her every morning, or them both every morning, simultaneously saying how much I love them, how much proud of them. But not only saying that I'm proud of you, I give them specifics on what makes me say I'm proud of you. I'm not gonna, because those words become empty. So I'm proud of you because of this. I'm proud. I love you because of that. Not just I love you. Saying I love you is great. You know, if you don't hear it all the time, but hearing it all the time, but also attaching something to it, I believe is also meaningful. And we're talking about summer, and Ronnie, we were talking about this earlier about, you know, what we've done and how we've stayed out of trouble or lack thereof, because sometimes I did get in trouble because I'm a teenager. I grew up in the hood.
Yeah, I did.
But noticing, and Venus, maybe you could talk about this also, you know, what's happening now, you know, being that at one point SYP for some youth employment was canceled. You know, fortunately SYP came back this Thursday, June 9th. So SYP is now
called the Bridge program, I think.
That's called the Bridge program. So it's about learning, they're learning like life skills and how to write resumes and how to prepare themselves for the future, financial literacy. So that's what it's gonna be more or less about virtually. I'm going to talk really quickly about what I've noticed. Maybe you guys can share. You know, I allow my kids to. Well, I send at the beginning of the quarantine. I sent my kids to my mother's house just to protect them, because you know I was going in and out, and my mom was going in and out of the house. So you know, my mom retired. So what I've noticed is me going, you know, dropping off groceries there. I noticed a lot of the young people, because there's no more basketball courts, because there's nothing for them to do. I noticed them outside, you know, getting hot. Gambling, you know, rolling dice, you know, passing hookah, not social distancing, you know, not practice, not wearing masks, you know, everything that, you know, we're trying to fight against or to support, you know, like it kind of scares me, because we don't have, there's no, at that point there was no SYP, all the rims were taking now, you know, there's no gyms, there's no dance classes, there's no art classes. Like, what have you guys noticed? If you guys have noticed anything,
I've noticed that parents have to be everything now. Before, you know, like you were everything before, but you had a place to send your kids, or there was something, even if you had teenage kids, there was something open, the Y was open or something was open, so you know where your kids were, you could send them. I think now we as parents and community leaders, because, you know, some kids, parents are community leaders, we have to be creative. So I know also my son, his art school does stuff virtually. A lot of things are going to be virtual. Some things we're gonna, as parents and as leaders, we're gonna have to take the extra mile and do. So I'm gonna have to take my son bike riding, even though I don't know how to ride a bike. I'm gonna have to go to a park, yeah, and jog, and just still be safe, you know, social distance. But I think, yes, we still, you know, there's a mob of, I'll say, there's a lack of resources because of this. And so kids are kids, and they're gonna go outside. They're gonna do, you know,
kid things.
Kid things. And so I think it's very important as parents, as leaders, as we talk and structure stuff. I think this is a perfect time for us to be creative and say, what can we do? How can we make sure that these kids are safe, especially during the times now? It's a lot going on. And me as a parent, I personally wouldn't want my son out in the street, just because of all the stuff that's going on. Crime is going up, you know, and we got to be honest, we got to talk about that, because that affects all of our jobs. If crime goes up, that means crime, drugs, alcohol, gambling, like you said, all of those things are going to create an unhealthy environment for people that live in the city. You don't want to walk through your development and you see a couple of people shooting dice and then somebody over here drinking and stuff like that. But that's there because there's nothing to do, you know?
Yeah, and it's hard for a lot of families too, because we look at all the online stuff, and those of us that have access to online, that's great. But if you don't, what are you supposed to do?
And if you're a parent that's working 2 jobs, you know, I mean, it's tough, you know? It's really tough. Your main concern is shelter, food, and lights. You don't have time.
Well, and that's one of the things we've always found, like in coalition development in the city, that coalitions, very often that are supposed to be prevention coalitions, if they don't deal with some of those issues first, we never get to the prevention message. So it's really important to look at that model when dealing with, you know, an inner city coalition. People need to put food on the table. They need to know that their kids are safe, like you said. But, you know, that's definitely a discussion for another show. I think we're getting to that point where we're winding down. But I'm so glad you came on today. You're welcome to join us anytime.
I'm so proud of both of you. Oh my God.
Thank you.
I'm so proud and so fortunate to have you both in my life. So thank you so much for being supportive to New York City Problem Gambling, and anything that you need from us or me, we are here to help.
Well, there's a lot of love in this room, in this Zoom room right now. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, love is what takes us through this together. So.
Venus, I know you shared a number earlier, but do you mind repeating it in any other way? In any other way the listeners can get in contact with you or anyone else from your organization? So
the number is 929-222-9566. So 929-222-9566. My email is bmore@nyproblemgambling.org. And our website is nyproblemgamblinghelp.org. And you can see we're all over the state, so you can see all the programs. So if you have a cousin who has an issue in Rochester, you can get help. So.
All right. Well, we're glad that we were able to, you know, spread that message. And we're at the end of another podcast of The Solution. Nothing changes. If we change, nothing. Take care. Have a great day. Love you guys.
Love you guys.